So lesson 5, training templates and exercise selection. This is now pulling everything together. This is the nitty-gritty here. This is truly now what separates you if you understand the aforementioned principles. So section A, organizing exercise selection. Choosing exercises should serve a purpose. We categorize exercises into 3 separate components here. Exercise taxonomy, 10 patterns of movement: horizontal pressing, horizontal pulling, vertical press, vertical pull, hip dominant, knee dominant, locomotion movement, change of direction, throwing, and abs. Abs, again, I know Pat Davidson uses in his taxonomy, thorax and pelvic dominant. So that just refers to the pelvis coming up or the thorax moving down. So both of those could be included in your abs. However, knowing this and how they fit into a template is what we're going to discuss next. The next principle under exercise taxonomy, positions of the body, right? Understanding the gait cycle, early stance, mid stance, and late stance. So knowing based upon our assessment that we talked about before, we know that doing a lying straight leg test, if someone can't get all the way up and they have a lot of posterior compression because they can't get their leg to 180 degrees, they're most likely stuck in late stance of gait. Why? Because they're an athlete. They spend a lot of time in acceleration on the forefront of their toes and 90 degrees of hip flexion. So the residual PNS fatigue and soreness that they're going to experience, their body is going to compensate for that consistent pattern that they find themselves in. So we know in the weight room that they might need to spend more time recapturing mid stance, recapturing early stance as they progress through a training block. Lastly, stance of exercise. We talked about this before in our programming speed: bilateral, unilateral, and ipsilateral. So knowing when to use all of those is very important, like we covered before. Organizing exercise selection part 2, fitness qualities trying to be trained. We have different ones here. We have resisted load, we have velocity and tempos, we have accommodating resistance, we have time sets, duration, volume, and reps, right? It's all about what is the physical quality trying to be trained. I'll use an example. In earlier phases of acceleration, when building the engine for sprinting, I'm also trying to build the engine in the weight room. I'm also trying to ensure I'm using more tempo, more eccentrics, greater ranges of motion. I'm not going to be doing different resistance. I'm not going to be extremely specific. So I'm going to use a lot of different variations at a lot of different tempos for greater duration, because I'm trying to intentionally induce fatigue during this block to build the capacity for the greater phases to come. Lastly, section A, organizing exercise selection part 3, variability. Variability is a hot topic in regards to the fitness community, but variability is very important all the way back to where we talk about overuse injuries for youth athletes who specialize too early. So variability is a concept that we use a lot in earlier phases of acceleration, in earlier phases of power intensification as well. Because this is where we need to layer in additional components of proprioception, stability, balance, manipulating training environments, surface area, and changing reference points. So thinking about variability, for example, if I'm moving from acceleration accumulation, where we take an individual who is stuck in late stance of gait, we know that we need to recapture heel strike. So in the weight room, we're going to do greater ranges of motion where their heel is the reference point. So we know that hip, we need to get to 90 degrees of hip flexion. They need to extend all the way up, use that adductor, hamstring, use that glute to get their hip to fully extend. That is one variation. Now, as I progress to power intensification, and now I retest and I see that I improved, right, my straight leg test,